Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix.
Good to be here tonight, and I get the privilege to introduce my friend Robert tonight. 38 years of sobriety, that's a lot of time, right? That's probably a lot more time than most of you have been alive, probably. But yeah, I mean, and I just a little bit about how I got to know Robert is he showed up at a meeting here at the Palace one day on a Saturday, and I liked the message, so I went up and shook his hand after, and we talked and stuff, and we became good friends, and we do a lot together. Like we kind of, I'm really involved in AA as well, and so we just kind of linked up, and we're trying to get this Palace resuscitated, the 5:30 meeting. So anybody that has time available during that time of the day, come and join us, man. We're trying to get this Palace back up and going. And but it's good to have friends like that in recovery. You find guys that are in the program that work a good program, and those are the kind of people I want to follow what they're doing. You know what I mean? And so that's what I've done is I've gotten those guys' back pockets, and I see how they do recovery, and I follow them around and stuff. He's not my sponsor, but he's almost like a sponsor. You know what I mean? Because we just communicate a lot, and he helps me at the program. He knows the book better than I know it, and I know it good. And knows the steps well and the traditions and all of that stuff. So that's kind of helping me with the next phase of my development and recovery. I'm at 11 years right now, and I'm super grateful for that. It's a miracle. And anyway, I just want to congratulate you and tell you what a good friend you are, and I appreciate you. And here's Robert, guys. 38.
Yep. And, thanks to a loving God that we find in these rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Incredible sponsorship. Meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps in the big book. I haven't found it necessary to drink or use any mind-altering chemicals since April 25th of 1986. And for that, I owe AA my life. I'm so glad we're friends. I met Jason on a Saturday at a meeting I don't come to, bringing a guy I no longer sponsor. Right? So you understand all the variables there. And I wasn't supposed to be here for any other reason but to meet Jason. And we think God has a plan for us, and when we submit ourselves to God, as we understand God, He opens up a whole nother door. And when you've been sober as long as me, you look for things to excite you. You look for things to take you to another level of your sobriety, because I love science, and Sir Isaac Newton has a basic law of motion, and 3 basic laws of motion. And the first law of motion is those that are at rest tend to stay at rest. Those things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. And if it's true for science, it's true for me. I know that's true because gravity, if I jump off a building, no matter how much I think I can fly, there's not enough LSD or psilocybin in the room to make me think that anymore, although I wanted to be a pilot. And so I'm just grateful for you and all that you do. And we partnered, and we're changing lives. We're raising up young men and women to lead. And it's so important that we do that. And welcome to the newcomers. I know Ardu is here, and it's an honor to speak before you. I was in detox. I was in treatment just like you are. And that seemed like a long time ago. In some ways it was, but in some ways it seemed like yesterday. But I'll tell you, my sponsor, who was my sponsor for 32 of my 38 years, died in 2019. And he died of severe cancer. And when my sponsor died, it was going to leave a big hole in my heart, in my life. And I part of me thought, what am I going to do without this man? I mean, he knew my dad. He gave me my year chip. He helped me from keep going out again. And this man was dying of cancer, and I knew it was going to be the last time I saw him. And I got sober in Las Vegas, by the way, so don't tell me where you're getting sober is difficult, because it's Vegas, baby. And not everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. There's a good laugh line. So I'm in the hospital with my sponsor, Jack, and he can hardly speak at this point. And I get down to him, I said, Jack, what do I tell him? And I could feel the loneliness come upon me, and a little bit of fear. Because the man I've known for 32 years, who held my hand, who did the steps with me, was going to die sober, 44-year sobriety. And I said, Jack, what do I say? What do I tell him? And he said, Bob, tell him it works. And that was the last thing Jack ever said. And I went down to my car and I cried, and I called my friend Will, who's got 44-year sobriety, who's my sponsor now. Will actually knew me longer than Jack did. And I slept on Will's couch when I relapsed because I was homeless. And you don't want to be homeless anywhere, but you certainly don't want to be homeless in 120-degree weather, and the bus driver tells you can't ride the bus all night long, and in Vegas. And so I called up Will and I said, Will, Jack just died, and he knew Jack. I said, I need you to be my sponsor. And I had a sponsor from my first week. So if you don't have a sponsor, get a sponsor. If you're not reading the 12 steps, if you're not reading the big book, read the frickin' book, because they didn't change the rules. When I came in February 9th of 1986, they said, here are the steps we took, which I suggested as a program of recovery. Here's the big book. This is a second edition. Printing was 13 printing 1971. They handed me that book, and they said, this guy's going to be your sponsor, and this is our list of meetings. You know what I'll tell you today? You know what Jason will tell you today? You need to get a freaking big book. Here are the steps. This guy's going to be, or gal's going to be your sponsor, and you need to go to meetings. You know why nothing has changed? Because we haven't changed. We are still selfish and self-centered, and that's what the big book says. It says is. Jason, I heard him speak last night, and I always appreciate every time Jason speaks, because he pointed out that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are written in the past tense, because they're telling us what they did. So the assumption is we did it. So when we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our life had become unmanageable, it's assuming we agree with that, right? If you don't agree with that, I'll just tell you what the big book says. Go out and get drunk. Yeah. Do us all a favor, because we don't want to hear you whine in between drinks. Just go out and get drunk, come back, be sweetly reasonable, drop to your knees, pray to God, save me, because I can't do this thing. That's the only chance any of us have. And if you don't like this message, then you don't like Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. We've watered the message down so much, we think we're in therapy. We do. Drop into an AA meeting sometime. Jason and I and others who have been around for a minute say, did you go to an AA? That was a meeting. That wasn't AA, though. That was AB or AC, something. But that wasn't AA. Because Alcoholics Anonymous has a specific plan. You know, when I went to my dermatologist when I had severe melanoma cancer, I didn't go get a second opinion. He diagnosed me. And he said, you have cancer, and unless we cut this out to the bone, you're going to die. You know what I said? When do we operate, man? When are you free? Because I'm free. He said, well, I got some space this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I'll be here at 1:45. You know, that's how I was after I relapsed. Because it says in the big book, we thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. I'm rather intelligent. You ask my ego. My ego will tell you how smart I really am. And I thought, you idiots, you couldn't figure out an easier, softer way, but I could. Maybe you had a bigger IQ, but I was able to get around. You know, we have lines we're getting over our whole freaking life. That's the only reason we survived that and alcohol and a little bit of drugs here and there, or a lot of drugs. And so I thought I could find that easier, softer way. But my sponsor will tell me, Robert, the easier, softer way is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know I'm talking a lot about surrender in the 12 steps, but that's what a newcomer needs to hear. Until we surrender to our disease, and our disease doesn't really show itself until we're sober. The phenomena of craving that they didn't even understand back in the 30s is one thing, but it's a phenomena of craving that kills most alcoholics. You notice that step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2 is the insanity that once I am sober, I think it's okay for me to drink. I talk about insanity. I look at my life and said, okay, I'm on my second marriage. My kids won't talk anymore. I'm unhireable. My mom and dad have locked the door, changed the locks. Nobody in my family will talk to me, and I can't get you to buy me a drink. And I think I'm sane. We do, don't we? We think we're sane. We wonder why they're telling us we have a problem. Everyone is doing it. You know, I had an employer once, and I was reliving this the other day, and I had an employer, and this was just my life. I had an employer that sat me down, and he said, "You're really a good worker, but at some point, your liabilities are going to outweigh your assets. And at that point, I need to make a decision to whether I'm going to keep you or whether I'm going to let you go." And he was really kind to me. He paid for me going to the Nevada Psychiatric Center, where they diagnosed me with obsessive compulsive disorder with high anxiety, and the result was alcoholism. And the prognosis was I would never get well. That's so much for the DSM-4. You know, I mean, I was pretty twisted. You know, I drank just so I didn't blow my brains out. But I had this employer who finally said, I can't keep you anymore. I love you like a son. And he did. But, and sometimes people would fire me in anger, but this guy, he really understood that I was trapped in a disease that no human power could relieve me of. Because if there was a human power out there, I'd have found her. Trust me, I'm a player. You know, you ain't seen nothing until you see me play. I mean, wearing this shirt right now, I'm a player. Only players wear shirts like this. That's true. So, I used to go to bars in Vegas, and not just any bar. They had to have 3 stools available. Talk about insanity. 3 stools available, and it was necessary that 3 stools were available, and I would sit in the middle stool, because I didn't know if Miss Right was going to show up on my left or show up on my right. So I had to have both stools available. That was the only part of the equation I hadn't quite figured out. And obviously she didn't show up. Well, my first 2 wives, but they left. I thought I picked the wrong bar. Think about that for a minute. The person who's going to fix you doesn't show up, and you don't think that's erroneous, that's insane. You just think, well, damn, I need to try the bar down the street. I need to try that bar. I need to try that casino. Because they're going to show up. I just have to have the right timing to meet them. But that's how my life was. I was always lonely. I was always in pain. I was always wondering why someone like me at 5 and 6 years old would hurt so much. I mean, many of you remember what that's like. And it doesn't really matter what family you brought from. Some of you came from good backgrounds. Some of you came from single-parent homes. Some of you were the middle of 7 children. Some of your parents were alcoholics. Some were codependent. It was across the board. Alcoholism doesn't care who you are. Alcoholism doesn't care your gender, your nationality. It doesn't care about your socioeconomic level. It will kill you if you're rich just as much as it will kill you when you're poor. So I grew up in an environment where I never measured up. I went to bed until I was 11. And I'm not sure why. My father went to bed, and that's a whole other scientific topic called enuresis, just so you know. Maybe that's only interesting to me. But I always grew up. So alcohol, by the time I was 14 years old, it seemed like a cool thing to do because we were getting away with it. But man, when I drank for the first time, I know why I drank the second time. Because I would tell people it would quiet the madness. You know what I'm saying? Why aren't you good enough? Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? Why aren't you smart as what, you know? And I knew that I found something that was going to take a person who came from nothing, who was a nothing, and alcohol made me an almost. Check that out for a second. Remember that drink? It was a sensation. It was a rite of passage going from a nothing to an almost. I'm never going to be anything, but I'm okay right here. And the disease of alcoholism was so progressive with me, being a periodic drinker from when I was 14 years old. When I was 18 years old, on January 3rd of 1972, I walked into the registrar's office of my high school and told them I was dropping out of school. That's how quickly alcoholism took me over. In Japan, they have a phrase that first the man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. I'm 18 years old, and alcohol was taking me to places that I never thought I would be. And no one knew what was going on with me. Dropping out of high school, I could have not shown up, and I would have graduated in May. But there was something in me, a defiance that said, I'll show you, I'll kill me. And I was tired when I was 18 years old of people managing my life and feeling like crap every time I allowed someone to fix what was broken beyond their ability to fix. So I think I've got a great idea. I'll go into the Air Force, right? Dropping out of high school just so I could drop out of the Air Force. I never made it out of basic training. I was in this place called Motivation, which is a really nice word for a crappy place. And the sergeant came up to me and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing? It's pretty obvious what I'm doing here." And he said, if you went back and applied yourself, you could graduate the top of your flight. That sounded good for a minute, but I knew who I was. And it wasn't long before they had me with the base psychiatrist, and they let me out with an honorable discharge. You ready for this? This is what it says on my discharge. Inability to adjust to military life. And the nicest thing they did was give me an open-ended prescription to 20 milligram Valium. For that, I was eternally grateful. But inability to adjust to military life. You could have been right if you took the word military out of there. You'd have been right. Because I couldn't adjust to life. I didn't know what it was like to not be medicated through life. Because every time I tried to not be medicated, something came up in me that would remind me of who I wasn't. Didn't tell me who I was, because we didn't go there. But who I wasn't, that was the 2x4 that beat the crap out of me every day that I did not drink. Every day. So I get a better idea. The military didn't work. I'll spend all summer drinking and passing out the pool, getting cigarette burns on my chest from the Valium. That was a good idea. I got good color, but a lot of cigarette burns. And you ever fall asleep by the pool and you smell and it's your skin? It's like your flesh is on fire. And you can't even feel it because you're so medicated. And you just drink more and you eat more, and that solves that problem. And so I think, I know what I'll do. I'll go back up and make this girl's life up in Oregon better. I'd been dating this girl. And that was a disaster. But she didn't figure out the disaster until we were married for 7 years and had 2 kids together. She was a wonderful person who just didn't understand what it was like living with an alcoholic. And trust me, I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be that guy that you could know where he was at, doing what he was supposed to be doing any hour of the day. That's who I always wanted to be. But I couldn't, because my life required more alcohol than the average person should drink. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I tried different combinations of substances, a lot. And it wasn't that I wanted to do those substances, but you can only drink so much. Because there's this thing called remorse. Anybody know what remorse is? Remorse is feeling bad today about what happened yesterday. That's the loose definition of remorse. So I figured out, so if I got drunk every night and I woke up the next day, I would have remorse. Aha. Thank you, crystal meth. I figured this one out. So I could, back in those days, they were like meth tabs. You could get 10 for $1. It was crazy. So I would drink a lot and I would sip these meth tabs down so I could snort them, because that's what I really like to do, or smoke them. Snorting was my method of choice. And so I learned that if I did the right amount of speed along with my alcohol, I could cut my remorse down like 2 times a week. That's pretty friggin' ingenious, right? We're really smart, whether we think so or not. So I would drink, get as high as possible on Sunday, pass out on Wednesday, wake up on Friday, and I'm cutting remorse out like days off. Like, I'm getting paid for this. And I thought that was a great idea, till I saw other people in the rooms who thought it was a great idea as well. And they were in the same position I was in. And that's how my life went. You know, it was disaster after disaster after disaster. And through this whole time, my alcoholism got worse and worse and worse because of the phenomena of craving. And it talks about that in the doctor's opinion. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Although they find it injurious, they can no longer, after a period of time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Anybody in here normal? But you're in treatment, so we'll just throw that out the frickin' window. But thank you for your attempt at honesty. They're restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes by at once. Doesn't take an hour. It's not like I'm taking Loratabs and I got to wait for them to get in my system. I'm drinking, and it's going right through my bloodstream. It's hitting my brain at once. What does that once mean? Right now. So unless they can have the ease and the comfort at once by taking a few drinks they see others taking with impunity. I've seen other people drink. I was a room service waiter in Las Vegas for many years. I had hospitality suites. I knew what normal people drank like. I wasn't normal. I would see them put down a cocktail. I'm thinking, God, I hope they leave that cocktail there for a minute, because I'm drinking that one. That's $150 a shot scotch. We're not letting that go to waste. And I didn't even drink wine, but I thought that was a good idea, because they got a $300 bottle of Cabernet that's just left open. The only thing that's breathing in this room is me, and I can't wait till they walk out of the room or I'm breaking down the hospitality suite so I can drink. And I say, well, I didn't know what happened to that bottle. It's just something happened. So drinks at once by impunity. Drinks they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire, again, I like to add again and again and again, because it goes on and on and on. And tell me if this isn't true in your life. As many do, and the phenomena of craving develops. See, it might not hit me with first drink or 2 drinks. But if you know much about science, there's acetaldehyde, and it actually compounds in alcoholics. So as we're drinking, we're actually storing up this alcohol in us, where normal people it metabolizes, us it does not. So it's scientifically true that the more I drink, the more I want to drink. And so the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through a well-known sprees, emerging remorseful, right? With a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire, not just a partial, an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of their recovery. Period. You can argue with that, and we'll see you in the next treatment center. And I know that sounds harsh, but I would rather have you get well and not like me than die and think I'm a wonderful person. I don't need you to like me. Right, Jason? We're pissing people off all the time. But they're sober. Because we have a message. You know, has anyone ever drowned? I almost drowned off the coast of Oregon. And a guy threw me a life jacket, a life preserver. Do you know what I didn't ask? Are you a nice guy? Will I like you? Or did I just grab that life preserver because if I didn't grab it, I knew I was going to drown? And until we know we're going to drown, there's very little hope of our recovery. You know, Jason, again, last night in the meeting that he shared at, on page 30, it says that we have to concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. So we think that is the first step. That's the first step on the wall. See, I admit to you that I'm powerless over alcohol, that my life had become immense. I'm saying that to you. I'm not saying it to me. I'm not saying it to Corey or to Marshall. I'm saying it to me. But there has to be something before you, because believe me, I'm a wordsmith. I know words. I didn't even know any of these words. I love dictionary.com. It's one of my best friends. Because I love words so much. So mimicking, being a parrot in AA, man, I listened to you for a few minutes and I got this down. I can recite anything. I can memorize things sober. I could memorize them drunk, but then I forget moments later in between drinks. But I could do that. And that's a lot of what we do. Keep coming back, it works. And rarely have we seen a person fail who has certainly followed our path. Those who do not recover, blah, 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 blah. But then we're drunk. You know, and I know that works right up until we relapse. And we're sitting in a bar and we're wondering, what the hell am I doing? Because that's where I was. My dad, who had been sober a number of years, took me to the Red Butler Motel on 15th and Fremont. And if you've ever been to wonderful Las Vegas and 15th and Fremont, you know what I'm talking about. Bars that I drank at no longer exist, for good reason. I think a lot of the prostitutes went with it. They just moved down the street, right? So my dad dropped me off at the Red Butler Motel, paid a week for me because I tried to go back to their house. And my dad looked at me and he said, your mother and I aren't going to watch you die. Hear that from your dad. We're not going to watch you die. Not I'm mad at you, not anything at all. We're not going to watch you die. And he paid a week for me at this motel. And I tried. Trust me, I tried. If there was a way I could have recaptured being an almost, I would have. I went out to the Sundowner Saloon across the way, Caddy Corner, and I tried to get drunk to where I forget who I was. And I couldn't. And I went back to my hotel room, and I never wanted to die. I just didn't know how to live. You've heard that, and you'll hear that, and when you believe that, you're on your way to sobriety. So here I am sitting in this hotel, and I knew the only place for me was Alcoholics Anonymous. Because you were the only people who liked me in spite of knowing everything about me. I was so afraid that when you said keep coming back, I was afraid that when you knew everything about me, the adulterer I was, who walks out on their children? Who physically moves their children out of the way to go to a bar? Guys like me. And I thought if you knew that, I would be, this is my mind of guilt and shame, I would be the first person in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous that you would ask not to come back. And it says, there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do have the capacity to be honest. I couldn't get there. I did have grave emotional and mental disorders, but I just couldn't get honest. I couldn't tell you. I had so much shame. I was afraid that you wouldn't like me. And if one more person or one more group said they didn't like me, where was I going to go? It's not like I had choices. You know, I went to a treatment center that didn't care if you had a job, money, or insurance. It was like the trifecta of we'll help you. You know, and AA doesn't even really care. If you don't have $1, no worries. Pay us when you get it. You know, put it in the basket when you can. And I was afraid of that, but I sat up in this hotel room, and I didn't want to die, and drinking no longer worked. It's not like I had a lot of options. So that morning, April 25th, 1986, I walked back, and this is God's providence. I walked back into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I walked in the back door so no one could see me coming in. My sponsor, who was never at this meeting, the 12:30 lunch bunch, was there an hour after the meeting was over. Right? I love when God just sort of does what God does. And after a discussion, we got on our knees and we did the third step prayer. And I never looked back. Working through the steps is the greatest gift of my life. Because I would be dead. And I was 32 years old. I was young. I'm older now. But I'm sober. And I'm 13,967 days sober. That's how sober I am. And I got like 4 hours left of the day. So there's a pretty good chance I'm going to see 13,968. And some people say, but who's counting? I'm counting. You better believe I'm counting. Because I counted every day when I was out there trying to be an almost. You trust me, I count every day being a somebody. Because that's where I've been moved to. But it's the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not, can't usually means won't, completely give themselves to this simple program. I know we're complicated people. That's such a line of BS. We like to think that in our ego, in our grandiosity. By the way, the ego, you know what the main purpose of the ego is? To convince me it does not exist. Period. So we are not a complicated people. This is a simple program for simple people who love to complicate things. Right? We'll take something as simple. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our life had been. What does that really mean, to be powerless? I can't stop from drinking. I'm drinking my paycheck and my utility bill. I haven't seen my family in 4 days. But what does it mean to be powerless? What does it mean really to be unmanageable? I've lost 5 jobs in a row. They came and repossessed my car. The state of Nevada won't allow me to drive. But I'm not sure what does unmanageable really mean? Come on, let's look at our lives for a second. I mean, you're at the palace in Orem. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that because recovery occurs here. But how did we get here? So I hope you're ready to admit. Because only when we admit that, I was telling Jason the other day that I had a good friend, Pete the Greek, and he was sober I don't know, 20 years, like 38 years ago. He's passed away with 50-some years sobriety. And I say, Pete, what step are you on today? And he'd say, step one. I'm always on step one. I'm step one. And you better be on step one, too. You know, today we live in 10, 11, and 12. But I remember I'm powerless over alcohol. That's why I do 10, 11, and 12. I don't do 10, 11, and 12 because I have nothing better to do. And I think, well, I've got something to do. I've got a couple hours in my morning. I think I'll continue to take a personal inventory. And when I'm wrong, I'm going to promptly admit it. No, when I'm wrong and promptly, they don't go together. Right? But I remember step one. And you know what? Step 10 reminds me of my humanity. How I'm nothing without a higher power. I am nothing. You don't want to know me without God doing for me what I can't do for myself. Trust me. You don't want to know me. Because I will use Jeremiah to the extent that he is dried up and I have no more use for him. That's who I am. Period. And it's not because I don't like Jeremiah. It's just that's who I am. So step 10 reminds me of my humanity, which says I can't do this, which is a natural progression to step 11, where I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as we, not me, because I'm pretty twisted, as we understood God, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. I give up power in step 1 to gain power in step 11. Not a bad idea. You know what's different about that equation? It has nothing to do with me. If it had something to do with me, step 12 would read a lot different. Right? If step 12 was about Robert Pardon, it would be worded differently. But no, it says, having had a spiritual awakening, nothing to do with me, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, nothing to do with me. And then the only thing that really gets to do with me is I get to go practice these principles, which are the 12 steps, in all my affairs. Not affairs that I think are convenient. All means all. Does all mean I can pick and choose, or does all mean all? We have to read the steps. So when it says, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I better know from step 1 that I'm an insane mofo. That I will burn my life to the ground after you see it resurrected. Because only then would I be willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understood God. Why would I turn my will and my life over to the care of somebody I can't see? God is a spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. That's what the Bible says, believe it or not. No, that's what it really says. You can believe it or not. And then once I do that, once my life is not mine, I'm now available to take a personal inventory of myself. A fearless and thorough moral inventory. And then, what do I get to do with that? Hi, Heather. Hi, Sophie. Good to see you. So I take that inventory, and I don't keep it to myself. That was my problem. I kept everything to myself. I lived in shame. I lived a secret. And that secret was killing me. So what do? I admit to God, who already knows, because he can see in the dark, right? Which is kind of freaky to me. And I admit to another human being who's not going to reject me the exact nature of my wrongs. I admit it to God, to myself, and to another human being. The freedom that is involved in that is amazing. I hope you get there. Because being freed of all that bondage is why I drank. And drinking put me in further bondage, and I drank more and more and more. It is only in the freedom that we feel in 4 and 5. And then what do I get to do? I get to do this thing called step 6. In the 12 and 12, it says this is a step that separates the men from the boys, or the girls from the ladies. There we go. But it says this is a step that separates. If I am entirely ready to have God remove these defects of characters, I will get well. If I'm not, I won't. Period. And this says this is a step we do for a lifetime. So then, I'm entirely ready. God hasn't removed these defects of character yet. By the way, inventory, wrongs in 5, defects of character in 6, and shortcomings in 7, they're all the same thing. Don't get it twisted. Don't complicate it unnecessarily. So then, So then I get to 7, and I humbly ask him to remove my shortcomings. I ask. He hasn't necessarily done it yet, but I'm asking. I'm saying, God, if you do anything for me in my journey, take these from me. But you know what? I've got some house cleaning before I do that. Before that freedom really exists for me. I make a list of all persons I had harmed. It was a long freaking list. And I became willing. I'm not doing it yet, but I make the list and I become willing to make amends to them all. What does all mean? All. Do I get to pick and choose? No, it says all. And then in step 9, once I make that list with my sponsor, I made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them and others. Joe and Charlie say it really good on step 9. There are those who are right now, those who are later, those who are maybe, and those who are never. Breaks them down. It's really, really brilliant. Right now, people we're facing every day. Later, I'll get to you when I get to you, right? I want to, but it's not convenient right now. I don't have the money, or I can't pay you back, but I told you I'm sorry, or I don't see you, you're across country, and I need a direct amends to you. Made direct amends to such people. They throw words in that to let somebody who wants to skate through life get away with it. And then once I do that, it frees me of everything. I've admitted my alcoholism. I've surrendered my life. I've told my secrets. I've asked God to allow me to be a person that I've always wanted to be. I'm humility. I'm humbled myself before my Creator. And then I go tell you I'm sorry. That is like the recipe for cleansing. And by this time, sanity will have been restored. I will seldom be interested in alcohol. Matter of fact, if I'm tempted, I recoil as if from a hot flame. That's what it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says that this seems to have happened automatically, providing we stay in good spiritual condition. There's a caveat to everything. Because the God that saved me in step 3, that I turn my will on my life, is continuing to save me throughout my entire sobriety. Because the answer to my alcoholism is I have a hole that only God can fill. And if I think a person, a place, a thing, a job, I'm retired. I live an amazing life, and that's not enough. I need to know that God will do for me what I obviously can't do for myself. And if you think that I've got over 38 years because I'm charming, you don't know God, and you certainly don't know me. Because I'm not that guy. I'm as selfish and self-centered as anyone you've ever met in your entire life. Ask my second wife. She will tell you. I didn't even know I was divorced from her. I got a phone call like I'm 5 years into my 3rd marriage, and my second wife called me and said, "Where are those divorce papers?" And I'm thinking, holy crap, I don't know. I was drunk. Anyway, that's a side story. But that's how I was in my life. And I won't tell you the story on how I met her, but it was kind of funny. But I wouldn't know what to do without the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is my life. It is everything I do. One thing about being retired is I can devote more time to AA and sponsors and working with guys like Jason and just seeing what can we do to rebuild the palace. What can we do to make AA a haven for those who are going to die if we don't step in and do something? How are we going to raise up the leaders? Who's going to tell the newcomer it works if it's not you and me? And that's the challenge. If it's not us, who's it going to be? If we're not sober, who's going to get sober? You know, we're not here for you. We're here for us. And if you benefit from that, that's great. Because that means if you benefited from that, someone else will benefit as a result of your benefit. And that's how this thing works. I've buried a lot of men and women in my 38 years sobriety. And the most fabulous people that I buried, I was pallbearer at my sponsor's funeral. And the sadness and the joy that was combating each other, as much as I was missing him, I was burying him. I was asked to be a pallbearer at a man who represents sobriety in Las Vegas. And that's how I want to go out. I'm probably going to die of old age. I'm 70 years old. I want to live a long time. So I tell people all the time, hopefully I don't get hit by a bus, right, or a drunk driver. But I'm likely going to die of old age. You know, I want to die. Well, you know how I want to die. However, my other options are I want to die mowing my lawn. No, I'm serious. I do. Because I mow my lawn. I have anxiety disorder. So I mow my lawn 3 times a week. And no one bothers me. No one ever comes and says, can I mow your lawn with you? They don't. None of my neighbors do. And so, you know what, though? It takes me an hour and a half to get my lawn completely done. And it's the greatest alone time I have with God. God just talks to me. I don't talk because the lawnmower's going. Or the weed whacker's going. My blower's going. Something's making noise. He can't hear me. But I can hear him. And I have an hour and a half, 3 times a week, where I just shut down and God says, this is who I want you to be. This is what I want you to do. I know you don't agree with it. I know you can't see it because it's required that you get out of you, which is not the favorite thing I like to do. Or I want to die in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing my experience, strength, and hope. Or I want to die with the newcomer, taking them through the steps. Those are my 3 ways that I would prefer to die. And with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and friends like you, I will probably die that way. I'm going to read you one page. It is my most favorite page of the big book because it tells so much about what has happened to you and me. It's page 17. There's a solution. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous know of thousands of men and women who are just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We're average Americans, all sections of this country, and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix. But there exists amongst us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feeling of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our own individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which now binds us. But that in itself would have not held us together as we are now joined. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. My name is Robert, and I'm an alcoholic.